Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing fantastic as usual. And in this video we will continue working on our to-do application like usual. In the last episode we actually made this sidebar a bit more responsive. So if I now go to mobile layout and check it out, we can see this nice little button popped up here. So this is responsive. We are only showing this button when we are on the mobile phone. And we're doing this because we didn't really have a good idea about where to put this sidebar, but it is still a sidebar. You know, the sidebar is the sidebar and we open it with the help of this button here. So I feel like this is a pretty clean design. You can just, the user can just click this button and then they can open it up and they can read everything just like a sidebar. We could also have like a nav bar on top here that we could open or something like that. Feel free to experiment with whatever you feel like looks the best. I'm definitely no expert at designing things. I like this flow of the application where you can just open it up when you feel like doing that. And on the desktop, we don't show it at all. We just completely hide it. You see, that was kind of a problem there with the resizing. Since we did this here, and this is only run when we first mount this app component. So this will run and we will not listen to whenever the screen resizes. So we aren't actually reactive here, but you can solve that with the help of Svelte window. Like I showed in the last episode, we can actually listen to the window with changing, which is really cool. And you can do that if you feel like doing that, but I'm just gonna set it here immediately when we run this code of this component, and we just set it so it will kind of break if I switch here and close it and then go back. Here you can see that it is no longer visible, but we're simply just doing this to make sure if we are on the desktop, we always want to show this sidebar. So we don't show this button at all because there's no real reason for that. We just want to have this sidebar. Like I said, it looks much better since on the desktop we have a lot of space to work with. We kind of have more space to work with than we would like, so we kind of fill it out a bit with the help of this sidebar here. We also added the ability to rename these boards, which is a really cool functionality, and it definitely helps, you know, if you don't want to have a default board and another board. But I also feel like we should add the ability now to actually delete the boards. So that should be pretty straightforward. I guess we can just add a button here next to this title, which is content editable, by the way, so that we can actually edit it as it is written. So we have all of this in to-do board, I believe. So yeah, we have this to-do board here and we show the to-do board name. So we show that board name. I guess we can clean up this code a little bit since there's a lot on this line. And what I mean is that we want to have a button next to it so that we can actually delete the board. And if you remember from the last episode, we actually did not go ahead and put that content editable on the task name here. If you were going to click it, then you kind of want to be able to click on the whole divider here, the whole button, even the text. So if you want to change this text, you simply edit it here. And I also feel like it looks kind of nice here. You can just read up here now if you want to know which board you are currently in. So let's now add a button, and that should be pretty straightforward with the help of Flexbox, of course, since we want to position it horizontally. So let's just add a divider here. We make this parent a flex container, and then we can just put an icon here. So let's use iconify. Let's find an appropriate icon for that. So we actually have a delete icon already, so I guess we can just use that to be consistent. That would be in the to-do item here, so to-do item actions, and then we have material symbols delete outline rounded. So I guess we'll just copy this, yoink this right away here. So we'll just keep it consistent, of course. And there we go, that's the one we used. Now that we have a flex container here, we also need to position this. So we can just do something like justify centered, and we justify all the flex content to the center here. And then we also want to align it vertically, so we'll do something like items center. And that definitely didn't work out. And I believe that is because we have a margin here. So we have a margin top on this title here. So if I remove that, it broke it even further. Yes, we have a lot of margin here that we don't want to apply here. We want to apply this to the actual flex container now that we have a parent here. So let's do that, and there we go, that solved our problem. So on this we can also add like a gap between these two, so we have a little gap between them, and there we go. Now we have a little cool button there. And we also probably want to wrap this. Since we can't add an event handler directly on this icon here, we need to wrap it in a normal HTML element. Then we can do something like cursor pointer here, since the default cursor for a span is not a pointer. And then on this we can add that actual event listener. So on delete, I believe we can do something like on delete, and then we can handle that there. So on delete has already been declared, so that's when we delete a task. So I guess we can rename this. So I just remove this real quick so I can actually perform that rename. So on task delete, that's a better name actually. So on task delete is definitely a more clear name to what the function is actually doing. We actually have a delete here, so I guess we need to update this to delete task as well, since I kind of wanted to have an event dispatcher for delete event as well. So delete task, and we're using this in app here. So on delete, we want to use on delete task, on board delete or something like that. On board delete. Then I guess I can dispatch an event here as well. So board delete, or just board delete. We need to be consistent here with this naming. Since we have task delete, we also now have board delete. So on board delete, then we simply use our custom event dispatcher here to emit an event here to the parent component so that we can handle it here. So on board delete, then we want to do something with this. So I guess we have current board. I guess we can just do something like on current board deleted. I'm not really sure if there's a use case where we have other two boards that we have, like, we need to tell them apart or something. I feel like currently we only have the current board to worry about, so let's not think too far ahead. Let's just handle it like it is now. So on current board deleted or something. So on current board deleted, and then let's create a function for that. So on current board update, we have on current board update. Now we have on current board deleted. We can save to the local storage already. Then we simply want to handle this. So we can do something like boards equals boards, and then we filter the boards. And we have a board here and the board ID. If that board ID is not current board ID, so we retain all of the item. We retain all of the boards that don't have the same ID as the current board. So we can just use current board ID here, since we have access to that. So on current board deleted. And then we have that there. So we also want to make sure that we switch to another board now that we have actually deleted a board. So I guess we can do something like current board ID is boards at 0. If we only have one board and we delete that, then this code will of course break. But let's just try it out real quick and see if the board actually works. So if I want to delete this board now, boom, I go to another board and it's deleted. And if I reload now, everything seems to work. Isn't that cool? But if I delete this now, we can clearly see that it breaks now because we don't have any boards to go to. And how do we want to handle this? We actually want to create a new board since we need to have a board. Or do we need to create a board? I guess we can just set it to null since we have that possibility, I believe. So let's see what happens now. If I delete this, absolutely nothing shows. And that is kind of what I wanted. But if I actually create a board here, I do that and then I click this board, then of course it works. So we can just use setting this to null. We handle this down here. So if current board, then we render it. And this current board ID kind of tells this variable here what board to get, and if this current board is null, we simply don't render anything. So that is really nice with the help of conditional rendering in Svelte. But I feel like we also notice now that when we create a board, I guess it would be kind of nice to switch to that board immediately. So why not add that functionality in real quick? So here we're using onboard created and we're just saving to local storage. But I guess we want to handle this now. So onboard created, we kind of need to know what kind of board was created here. So we have here board created, then we have this board here. So I guess we want to pass in this board that we are actually creating so that we can use its data. So let's just create a variable for that called board, and then we just create that variable here. So let's board will of course be a task board to make TypeScript happy, and then we can dispatch that and actually pass in that board so we can actually send some data to the parent component here. Let's actually just create a function for this now. So on board created, and let's handle this here. So on board created, and then we have an event here, and the detail that we want to handle is a task board. So let's see if that works. So if I get that detail here from that board, and if I create a new board here, and boom, we actually get that board. Let's just give it another name called personal. Yeah, you can see that that works. Really cool. So now we can just switch that board. Current board ID is e.detail.id. We don't really actually need to know the full board, but I guess if we have a use case for that in the future, then it's always nice to have access to it right away. So of course we want to save to local storage. You can see when our development server refreshed here, we can see that that disappeared. So if I create a new board now called personal, it is switched to immediately, and if I reload now, it's also saved. So like I said, you can also see here that we're not keeping track of which current board is active, but that shouldn't be too difficult to add. And I guess we can do that as well. It would kind of be convenient if I'm working in personal and then I close the tab or something and then I open it back up. Then of course I want to be on personal. I don't want to spend that extra 2 seconds just clicking away here. We can just go to it immediately. It should be super straightforward to just save that to local storage somehow. So this is where we save to local storage, and currently we're just stringifying boards, but we also need some other data now. So I guess we can create a model for this. Let's just create an interface like storage data. This will just be our interface for the data that we store to local storage, so that we have an interface in TypeScript, so that we know which properties that we can use. So in here we can just pass in boards, and that will be a task board array, and then we also want to pass in the current board ID. So that would actually save the current board ID so that we can select that board when we load the page, and that should be it. So let's just use that here, and then we want to set this item here. We want to create a new object here, which will be data. This will be storage data, and then we'll create an object here, and we press in boards, and then we press in current board ID. So if you don't know, if you have the same key as I have the value here, you just use a shorthand here. So this becomes this instead. That is a lot cleaner in my opinion. So we can just do that, and now we can also stringify that data now instead of just the boards. And then for loading, where are we doing that? So we're doing this over here. I guess this is kind of a bad practice that we put all of this inside of onMount. We can just put it in a function instead of putting it from there. Perhaps we want to do other stuff in onMount later. So let's just have some good practices here. So load from local storage should be no different. And instead of a task board array, we actually want to use storage data here. So we parse that into storage data, and then we do board equals data.boards, and then we can do current board ID. Instead of getting the first one here, we can just do something like data.current board ID. And hopefully that should work. And boards is undefined, and that is because we have some old data inside of local storage. So let's clean that up real quick. So if I reload now and I switch to another board and reload here again, that did not work at all. So let's see what data I have here. Perhaps we're just not saving to local storage when we switch a board now. So let's see where we do that. I guess we do this here in the sidebar. So onboard created, bind current board ID. And when we switch this, we kind of need to know when that happens. So on current board, onboard created. Okay, so I guess we want to do this here in get current board. This should only be called whenever the current board ID changes. So I guess it's kind of sensible here to save to local storage when we switch the board. So let's see if that works now. If I switch to another board and reload, it still doesn't work. So there's something funny going on here. If I just log out current board ID and see what happens. So we definitely get some IDs here, then that seems to be correct. What kind of data are we storing here? If I just log that data as well, let's see what happens. And we can see that that data looks pretty good. So I'm not really sure what this is about. It's just not loading it properly or something. Let's see what happens if I log this here and see. Yeah, so we actually get some data here, and there seems to be no problem. We also have the current board ID. That shouldn't be null. So we're just parsing that here. So if I just log that here, you see the current board ID seems to be correct. If I switch now to another board and reload, it still doesn't work. I'm not sure what this is about. Log current board ID and see if it changes. So this is 0D and this is, well, okay, so there we go. 85. Kind of need to log this somewhere. So I guess here in to-do board, we can just output the board ID as well just to see what it is. So board.id, have 853 here, and we'll reload here. It doesn't seem to save anything at all. Look at this. If I create a task now, what happens? Will it be persisted? Nope, it won't. It's completely broken or something. It's definitely not saving things properly anymore, so that's not good. But we see that we get some data here. We can see that it's logging that JSON data that is stored in the local storage, but it seems like it just doesn't save things anymore. Or am I doing something really funny here? If I create another board, does it save that? If I reload now, nope. Everything is completely broken. So I definitely broke something here with this new data structure. Perhaps this could be a problem if I'm now saving here when I do get current board. Let's see when this is saved. So if I just log now, if I save it, perhaps I'm overriding it before I get any data. Let's see what happens. So if I just reload now, I can see that it's doing this. It's saving to local storage because it's doing get current board. So we're actually saving to local storage before we actually switch the board. So this is really bad. We probably should just add an event dispatcher from the sidebar where we're or whatever we are doing. So we onboard selected. I guess we can just create an event dispatcher for that. So we can just do something like dispatch board selected, onboard selected, and then we can simply do save to local storage and see if that works instead. So if I just go to get current board, we don't want to save to local storage. If I just reload now and I create another board and reload here, and there we go. Now it seems to be working. So I switch to this board, I switch to that board. Yep, it seems to be working. Isn't that cool? That's really nice. So that is really nice. We kind of had a problem here. If I'm just saving to local storage, this is actually run before the component is mounted. So it will just overwrite with some default data. We have this default data that we're assigning here. So we're just saving that data to local storage. That's why we had that problem that nothing we did was saving. We're just overwriting it with the default data that we have here, this template data. So we don't want to do this in get current board. That was kind of ambitious. So we just want to do this whenever we select a new board. And that seems to be working. When I'm in ASTAS and I reload, and we can see that I'm still in ASTAS. And if I just create some tasks real quick and see if that works as well. I move this around here and I reload. I go back to default board. I'm still in default board. Yes, it seems to be working. So that's really nice. Now the user doesn't have to be interrupted in whatever they are doing. And let's also see if deleting works. So if I delete this board, will this persist? I think it will. So let's see here. So we have onboard deleted. We're also saving to local storage and we're setting it to null here. So I guess we can check here if we have any boards left, and perhaps we can select them. So if boards.length is more than 0, then we have some boards left, and we can do current board ID is boards at 0.id, and then we can do else here. So else the current board ID will be null since we have no board left to go to. So let's see if that works. If I add another board here and I delete this board, then I should go to default board, and yes, I did. And then I can reload, and that also worked. Perhaps we can do something like save to local storage, but we are already doing that here. So no reason to worry. We're just updating that current board ID, and that will be part of that saving here to this local storage. So let's see if I rename here, if that still works. It doesn't seem like we broke too many things there. So just a little blunder, and I reload here, everything seems to be working fine. If I reload here and I delete this board, I have this board left. So really nice. Now we got that covered. And so now we can see that we are in the board that we previously were in, and that is really nice. All right, guys, we now got all of that covered. So it seems we have a nice working board system. We can create new boards, we can update their name, and we can delete them. And we also persist whatever the last board the user was on. So I feel like that kind of sums up all of that board functionality that we now have in our sidebar. And all of that seems to be working pretty nicely. So I feel like in the next few episodes, we'll tackle some other stuff, perhaps looking a bit at refactoring our code, just like I said. I've broke a lot of things and messed up the code a bit, so it looks a bit bad right now. I feel like we kind of need to restructure our code a bit and have a look at some old things. Always good to do that at some different intervals to make sure that the code stays clean and healthy and maintainable. So I feel like we should check on that in the next episode and perhaps implement some other stuff. I feel like we're kind of done now with the sidebar system. So feel free to comment if you have any ideas of what you would like to see. I'm definitely open for suggestions. Also, feel free to comment how your project is going. I would love to know. Also, consider subscribing if you want to be part of this community that I'm trying to build, where we can learn from each other and build amazing software together. That would be really cool. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.